Good morning. First item of business is general questions. At question number 1, I call Claire Hawkey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update regarding its engagement with credit unions in regard to C Mutual withdrawing its family protection plan.
Minister Richard Lockhead.
Scottish Government ministers and officials are regularly engaging with representatives of Scottish credit unions impacted by the withdrawal of the Family Protection Plan, as well as with the FCA and C Mutual. We understand that the Independent Coalition of Credit Unions have now met with Lucy Rigby, the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, and formally with the FCA as well. Due, of course, to the FCA's regulatory independence from government, we are unable to intervene in regulatory investigation processes.
Claire Hawkey.
I thank the Minister for that answer. I've been meeting regularly with the Independent Coalition of Credit Unions who have been working tirelessly to support policyholders impacted by the Family Protection Plan's withdrawal. What we need, though, is the Financial Conduct Authority and the UK Treasury to compel C Mutual and Maiden Life to discuss mitigating the actual harm that is now occurring in the form of financial redress. According to the Coalition, around 20 people who were policyholders have died since the financial support from the plan was withdrawn, showing we need action from the UK authorities as a matter of urgency. Can the Minister outline any discussions the Scottish Government has had with the UK Government counterparts or the FCA in this regard?
Minister.
I thank Claire Hawkey for bringing this issue to the Chamber. And, of course, our thoughts will be with the loved ones of those who have lost their lives. And can I also pay tribute to Claire Hawkey for supporting the members of credit unions. I can tell her that I have again written this week to Lucy Rigby, the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, to highlight the concerns of some of the Scottish credit unions and, of course, offering to meet her to discuss this issue as well. In my letter, I set out 3 issues that require the Treasury's urgent attention. Firstly, support for families who face funeral costs without adequate cover. Secondly, a clear determination of whether any kind of misconduct or regulatory breach has occurred in the sale or administration of the policy, including during its closure. And thirdly, consideration of any reforms needed to improve consumer protection in relation to closed book and group insurance products as well. And we continue to engage with stakeholders on this issue.
Thank you. Question number 2, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment is made of what savings there have been to Greenock and Inverclyde constituents since the removal of peak rail fares.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
The removal of ScotRail peak fares for good is currently an equivalent to an average saving of 17% across all ticket types for hundreds of thousands of people. Passengers travelling 3 times a week on average between Greenock and Glasgow have saved nearly £280 between September and Christmas 2025. And as living costs rise, this SNP government is reducing costs for commuters. Work is underway to put in place a robust analytical process to evaluate the permanent removal of peak fares. It will take some time to be able to meaningfully analyse the impact of removing peak fares. It's too early to draw firm conclusions without more data, as patronage and revenue are sensitive to things like weather and sports events. But we anticipate that we'll be able to share emerging findings after the policy has been in place for at least 6 months, with further reporting towards the end of the year.
McMillan.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that reply. And in addition to the removal of the peak rail fares, the Wemyss to Glasgow line, which covers part of the constituency, now has the 2 services per hour. It's something which I lobbied for quite some time. And so between these 2 things alone, many of my constituents also benefit from this increased service. So can the Cabinet Secretary advise what further plans the Scottish Government has to make rail travel more accessible and also affordable for passengers in Inverclyde?
Cabinet Secretary.
So can I congratulate Stuart McMillan in helping to secure that additional service for his constituents. The removal of peak fares for good is making a major impact on affordability, but ScotRail also have a range of discounts, including flexi passes, season tickets, rail cards, kids for £1 and Club 50 to make rail travel affordable for passengers against the need to generate revenue and invest in a reliable and sustainable rail network. And of course, cheaper commuting rail fares provides more choices for people of where they might want to work and encouraging more people to travel into our cities and spend money in retail and hospitality, and of course tackling the climate emergency by encouraging new potential passengers onto the train and to leave the car at home.
Thank you. Question number 3, Willie Coffey.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what more can be done to tackle the problem of abandoned and derelict shops and buildings in town centres.
Deputy First Minister.
This is an issue across many of our towns, and that's why we continue to deliver on the long-standing commitment to regeneration with investment of up to £47 million in 26-27, and that includes support for revitalising town centres, encouraging town centre living, addressing the blight of vacant and derelict land and supporting community ownership.
Willie Coffey.
Can I thank the Deputy First Minister for that answer? The fact of the matter is that councils like East Ayrshire and others, no doubt, don't serve amenity notices under Section 179 of the Planning Act to deal with this, because they feel that there is little hope of success and the risk of the public purse having to pick up the bill. The result is continued deterioration of buildings and empty shops, and the negative impact this has for everyone having to look at these on a daily basis, blighting our towns. Could the Deputy First Minister say if any alternative approach might be pursued, legislation or otherwise, to look at this problem afresh, and to see if government, councils, building owners and retailers can come together to really tackle this issue and improve the look and feel of our towns for everyone's benefit?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, local authorities, as Willie Coffey has outlined, do have powers to act, and I would urge councils to work with communities, including landlords, to agree town centre plans and priorities. We are continuing to look at further options. Last year we consulted on permitted development rights and compulsory purchase reform, both key issues affecting town centre regeneration and the reuse of vacant buildings. We're analysing those responses to inform next steps, and the analysis will be published in due course. I think we could also learn from examples like Aberdeen's Our Union Street project, where partnership working, including the local council, the bid and additional support from Scottish Government have helped to transform the town centre, including working with landlords to revitalise units and shop fronts that have fallen into disrepair.
Brief supplementary, Mercedes Vialba.
Well, the regeneration of Aberdeen's Union Street has been hindered by poor planning from the start and compounded by the outsourcing of the work by the SNP-led City Council. This has resulted in the closure of numerous shops and small businesses and caused substantial disruption to the city centre, community and the nightlife. So can I ask, what representations has the Minister had from the SNP Council leaders about what support that can be offered to them to actually get this city centre regeneration off the ground?
Well, the member will know about the support that we have provided in terms of financial support, and as a big believer in empowering local government, the decisions that are taken by local government are questions for them rather than for the Scottish Government.
Thank you. Question number 4, Jamie Halcrow-Johnston.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on whether local authorities should increase council tax, reduce public services or a mixture of both to meet any gaps in local government funding as a result of the draft budget.
Cabinet Secretary Shona Robson.
So the draft Scottish budget provides an above real terms increase in local government settlement to almost £15.7 billion in 26-27. Councils have autonomy over how to utilise the vast majority of this funding, including £253 million of fully flexible new money, alongside all locally raised income to respond to local priorities. This should ensure that councils are able to exercise restraint in setting council tax rates and minimise the impact on local people and household finances.
Jamie Halcrow-Johnston.
This is a budget that fails to deliver, one which was a very poor settlement for local government, which fails to address the dire financial situation of local government. Not my words, the words of COSLA resource spokesman and SNP councillor Ricky Bell in his letter to Shona Robertson. And in that letter, he highlighted council leaders' concerns over the continued deprioritisation of local government and a further real-term cut in funding over the coming years. So I'll ask again, because of this latest SNP budget, a budget that fails to deliver, should my constituents in Orkney, in Shetland, in the Western Isles, across Highlands, in Murray and in Argyll and Bute expect council tax increases, cuts to their public services or a painful mixture of both?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think the key fact here is that all commentators agree that the local government settlement has increased in real terms. That is a 2% real terms increase compared to the 25-26 local government settlement, all set out in the budget. And I guess the question for Jamie Halcrow-Johnston is that if there was £1 billion of unaffordable tax cuts, then there would not be a single penny of extra money for local government, but rather a deep cut in local government funding. And of course, what I have produced is a draft budget. So if Jamie Halcrow-Johnson and his colleagues want to suggest a change in the budget at the next two stages to give more money to local government, then they can. But the issue here is they'll have to tell us where it's to come from and how that would be delivered. So I will wait in anticipation for Jamie Halcrow-Johnson to come forward with that proposal.
Thank you. I would ask members who have not been invited to speak to refrain from doing so. Move to question 5, Megan Gallagher.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government for further detail on how the increase in the International Development Fund announced in the 2026-27 budget will be spent.
Cabinet Secretary Angus Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In her statement to Parliament, the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Local Government set out that while others are choosing to reduce commitments to international development, I'm proud to confirm that in Scotland we will increase our International Development Fund by £25 to £16 million. We also reaffirmed our commitment to climate justice, with over £12 million allocated to support vulnerable communities in the Global South, particularly women and young people. And as the budget is currently in draft, we await final agreement through the parliamentary process before confirming allocations and spending plans for next year that reflect the proposed uplift.
Megan Gallagher.
The International Development Fund saw a 25% increase on last year, and at the same time the alcohol and drugs budget was cut by around £1.3 million in real terms, and the health capital budget was cut by almost £50 million. Our constituents will be wondering why, and why those issues were not high up the priority list as international development. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, will the Scottish Government simply get on with the actual priorities of hard-working Scots? That's building hospitals, improving public services and addressing Scotland's shameful drugs death crisis, which remains the worst in Europe.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as the member knows, there's a very significant financial contribution, in particular in the health and social care budget. But at the same time, I hope she recognises that Scotland's charities and humanitarian relief organisations have done and continue to do a fantastic job. And international development has been supported by Scottish governments for the last 20 years and enjoyed cross-party support. I assume that I have to conclude from the intervention of the member that her party is opposed to international development spending and opposed to that consensus, and I'm very sorry if that is indeed the case.
Brief supplementary, Jamie Green.
The irony is that those who complain about our waning influence in the world are the same ones who complain about our development budget. Our aid commitments give us soft power. We should aspire to lead the world in aid and development. They're not actually my words. They're not even the Lib Dems. They are the words of former Tory Prime Minister David Cameron. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with them? Because I do.
Angus Robertson.
Well, I agree with Jamie Green, I agree with David Cameron, and I agree with all other political parties in this chamber that have supported international development over the last 20 years. It's just very disappointing to see the Conservative Party walking away from that consensus.
Question number 6, Michael Matheson.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Economy Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding whether social impact bonds can be used to improve the employment opportunities of young people, including in Falkirk West.
Deputy First Minister.
There is an opportunity for a more considered and consistent approach to philanthropy in Scotland, which has the potential to add value to the Scottish Government's approach to social justice. The Scottish Government remains constrained in terms of borrowing powers and flexibility for new financing arrangements, but we are committed to improving opportunities for young people, including in Falkirk West.
Michael Matheson.
I'm grateful for the response. The Deputy First Minister will be aware that social impact bonds can lever in significant additional investment in supporting the expansion and the delivery of social enterprise and third sector organisation services. They've been very successfully used in England for a number of years now, securing millions of pounds of additional investment for these sectors. Can I therefore ask the Scottish Government whether it will work with stakeholders such as Social Impact Scotland to look at how we could deploy the use of social impact bonds here in Scotland across a range of areas in order to secure this additional investment?
Deputy First Minister.
I have followed the launch of the UK Government's Better Futures Fund and the Office for the Impact Economy with interest, and I see the potential opportunities of a social impact bond model to support wider policy approach to the third sector and social enterprises. So yes is the short answer to Michael Matheson. We are happy to continue to explore all options to deliver on those commitments to support the people of Scotland and a sustainable third sector.
Question number 7, Liz Smith.
Government what measures it's putting in place to encourage young people to engage in the arts?
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government has a long-standing history of supporting young people to engage in the arts through programmes such as the Youth Music Initiative and Systema Scotland. We are proud that both of these programmes will receive an uplift in the 2026-27 budget, taking our annual investment to £10 million and £2.787 million respectively. Both programmes demonstrate the transformative power of culture, ensuring young people of all backgrounds have the opportunity to enjoy music and the wider arts.
Liz Smith.
I thank you for that. I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary followed closely the recent Finance Committee evidence that we took from the 5 performing arts companies. And at that session, Alex Regic of Scottish Opera said this: "It's interesting that we see a trend and increasing evidence that teachers no longer have the skills to deliver elements of the creative part of the curriculum." So could I ask what discussions this Cabinet Secretary is having with the Cabinet Secretary for Education to address what is quite a serious concern?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I say I've been in extensive conversations with the national performing companies over the years, and I acknowledge the importance that teaching and the teaching pipeline, the students that come through from our schools into the likes of the Royal Conservatoire are very important. If she will allow me, I'll write back with greater detail, because I acknowledge that it's really important that our young people receive the investment and the support. That's exactly what's happening through this budget process, and can gently suggest to Liv Smith that if she agrees with me that that is important, that she votes for the budget.
Question number 8, Fergus Ewing.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is about whether, without the use of private finance to enable construction of key infrastructure projects, there's a risk that Scotland could be seen as less attractive for inward investment and as a location for business compared with other European countries.
Cabinet Secretary Shona Robertson.
So Scotland remains a highly competitive location for inward investment, consistently delivering jobs and economic benefit. EY data shows that in 2024, Scotland was the UK's leading destination for inward investment outside London for the 10th consecutive year, and is ranked 6th among the top 10 FDI destinations in Europe. We will continue work with the Scottish Futures Trust to explore revenue funding options for infrastructure investment, and this aims to unlock additional private investment while ensuring value for money for the public purse.
Fergus Ewing.
An analysis of the capital budget, both for this and next year, shows that the sum of it devoted to trunk roads is 8%. And in fact, only half of that relates to improvement as opposed to maintenance and adaptation. That's a paltry amount, Cabinet Secretary. So surely you must agree that, if we're to see Inverness and Aberdeen connected to allow the renewable engines of Powerhouse achieve what they can achieve, they must have dual carriageway links, as must the south of Scotland, the A1, the A77. How on earth are we going to achieve all these things unless we change our priorities and find different ways to raise capital for these vital projects?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, of course, Fergus Ewing will be aware that capital funding is constrained, and as well as the roads programme, there's also the housing investment, which of course we are investing £4.9 billion, £4.1 billion of which is public capital money. And I'm assuming Fergus Ewing would support the investment in housing as well as the investment in roads. And of course the constrained capital position is exactly why we are looking at revenue finance options that are being considered, including all the procurement options being looked for the A96. So we will continue to do that to ensure that we can make sure that we can invest in our infrastructure, because we know how important that is to growing our economy.